Also, I'd like everybody who is listening to be interactive. I'm gonna check if you are writing something, because we're gonna do some interactivity. And before we begin, I'm gonna ask you a simple question. Type in chat or in Q&A if you are, if we wanna go left or right. And then I'll check based on the first answer available. So I'll give you like 10 seconds to do that. So right, left or right. That's what I wanna see. Okay. All right, so I saw one person say left. So we're gonna go left this time around in this particular presentation. And when we go left, first things that I wanna say is good choice. I'm happy that we're going left because that is my favorite direction today. And we're gonna talk about work. But before we begin, we need to understand what is work? What is the whole concept of this thing that we call work? I also ask you to write in chat or in questions what you think work is. Some definitions of what you think work is, we can check it out later. But for me, I'm very curious, right, what this concept is, because we've been doing work for hundreds of years, not thousands. Before, we didn't really have work when we were hunters and gatherers. We just kind of lived a life. But the whole concept of work is actually fairly fresh. So I'm very curious, why do we do it? How did it come about in our society? And when you start looking into the word work in any language, the interesting thing is that the etymology of the language and where it comes from, the origins, are almost always negative. So if you look at travail, trepaliere, it all means torture, to inflict agony and suffering upon other people. Arbeit is effort and hardship and suffering. Labora is also the same. And even in Russian or Slavic languages, rabota, it comes from the simple word slavery. So it's interesting that work is actually a concept that is something called hidden slavery. But why is it hidden? Well, because if it wasn't so hidden, we would not be willing to do it willingly. We tried, the non-hidden slavery for quite a long time. And then people realized that they don't want to live that way. They rebelled, there were wars, and they were fighting against it. And we realized that that's not going to work anymore. So we had to find a way how to make people do things for those in power without them realizing that they are doing it for someone else. And we made some sort of a trade in a very creative way of how can we do that. And basically, we became robots, right? We as humans, as humanity, we became robots. Because now we are, and if we look at the word robot, it comes from Czech. It means the same thing. It means slavery, right? So robots that we are creating, they're also going to be enslaved. And we can talk about that in a future discussion. But what I'm interested in is that we as humanity are actually in some way currently enslaved. And my question to you is, do you have to be? Because what we did right now is we created a society where we are trading away 50% of our time to do something else. And this reality that we live in is quite interesting because right now, a lot of things are starting to change. And of course, a lot of people talk about the obvious things, such as the advance of real AI and robotics. And we predict that about 25%, and according to some sources, up to 50% of all jobs are going to be either fully or partially automated. And that is going to change, and it's going to change the market, and it might help us to break away from this slavery of ours. We also see, thanks to the pandemic and things that are happening right now, that remote work is picking up speed. And according to McKinsey, if you who asked the CEOs of largest corporations, 70% of them said that they want to employ a lot more freelancers and a lot more temporary workers in their organizations because they have to, because this is something we are currently demanding from our employees. So, what is really happening here? Like a lot of people, when they look at it, will be talking about the pandemic or the political situation, but really this shift has been happening for 10, 20, or even more years. We have been slowly shifting what we want to achieve in life and how do we want to do it. But why? Why is this really happening? Well, if you ask me, I think people are slowly waking up. They are realizing that they are trading 50% of their time to do something that they actually dislike and hate, and they're realizing that there is perhaps another way. Perhaps I can do something purposeful, maybe I can do something meaningful, And people are starting to ask difficult questions. Do I have to work 50% of the time in a place that I hate to be at? The problem is that we in our society have been taught by our parents, who have been taught by their parents, not to ask such questions and not to ask difficult questions such as, why am I here? What is the purpose in life? What should I be doing with my life? What is my calling? And, I would say that 1,000 years ago, we didn't have to ask those questions, but now we do. And a lot of people are starting to ask them. And that, I think, is a more important hidden driving force of why everything is changing in the workplace. And what is really changing in the workplace? Well, if you look at it, I think there's a lot of practical things that are changing. Yes, we want to work more remotely. Yes, we want to be in many different countries. We want to be able to have different projects. But there are, I think, some more important and basic things that I think we need to understand. First, more and more people are demanding to work for a purpose. What that means for employees and people who are running startups is that you won't any longer be able to attract talent to you if you just pay a high salary. You have to give people something more. You have to answer that question. Can they achieve their true potential and purpose in their workforce? Another thing that's happening is people are shifting towards artistry and quality. So no longer it's about quantity, right? Now people don't care about the quality of their work, the quality of what they produce, the artistry of the product that they deliver. Another thing that's also been confirmed, for example, by McKinsey, as I mentioned before, is the fact that because of all these changes, now emotional skills, people skills, and social skills are becoming so much more important in our society. And with that comes the value mindset, right? So people now don't want to just do things meaninglessly. They want to deliver value to society and not just themselves. So if you look at the very, very young kids who are 15, 16, 17-year-old now globally, they care about the climate change. They care about what value the society generates from their work. Also, people don't really want to be exploited anymore. They have figured out that they are being exploited. And look at the simple facts. If we take Apple and take their profits for 1 year and simply distribute them to their employees, each person would then get 700,000 euros more in salary every single year. And to me, that's quite interesting because they are the people who actually deliver the value. The shareholders that hold the stock and the equity, a lot of them don't do anything. They just bought it and they don't actually deliver any value to society by holding that stock. But the people who actually work, they get a smaller salary. And of course, okay, let's say Apple is a very interesting example because their salaries are very high. But in other companies where the profits are distributed unfairly, I think there's a lot of exploitation going on. And finally, I think a lot of new generation people are recognizing that it's no longer about their country or their city, but that we live in a global village and we need to start thinking globally, not just to move globally. And we need to understand that we are all from Earth and that we need to take care of not only our homeland, but also of all the countries and all the people, no matter where they come from. And these things are going to affect how businesses work. Because if you can't tick these boxes for the new generation, you won't be able to get them to do anything. And that's a good thing, right? Because I don't want to get anybody to do anything. I want people to do things that they decide for themselves they want to do with their lives. And I think it's unfair of me as a CEO or of anybody to want something of other people without their consent or without their true and honest desire that is stripped away from the social conditioning. Because we are socially conditioned to work. But I think we need to change that. And I think it is changing because what I think we need to do is to go towards vocation and craft. I think we need to delete the whole concept of work and remove that word from our vocabulary because that basically means slavery. So we don't want to be slaves. We don't want to spend 50% of our time on something we hate. We already won 50% by battles and wars and deleting slavery. And now the battle is on for the other 50%. We need to get back all of our time, 100% to ourselves to decide what we want to do with it. And what that means is that I believe that the future of work is actually going to be seamless. The future of work is going to be a process where you can't actually easily say, when are you working and when are you not working? When are you doing a task for someone else, or when are you doing a task for yourself or your family? The future of work is going to be a very dynamic process that is happening in flow when you're just living your life and you're just trying to do the best that you can to provide the highest amount of value to your society and those around you. And you're no longer going to call it work. You're no longer going to ask the question of, what's the balance between life and work? Because these things need to go away. We should not have a work-life balance. We just should have simply life that will live to the best of our ability. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to that fact. And a lot of people are starting to demand this from organizations. So if organization doesn't change to this, I think we'll have to figure out something very powerful to do that. And we'll have to fight for this. And it won't be easy to do, because still not the majority is still not there. A lot of people don't realize this, and they're not still waking up. But the difficulty is that a lot of people are. So businesses are already reacting. If you look at big companies like Facebook and Google, they are realizing this, and they're trying to figure out in their marketing, in their way they attract people, how can they change the way that they attract people. And that's why they say, well, we'll work with freelancers. But what they don't realize is that the problem is much bigger than just simply allowing people to work where they want to work from. You need to change the mindset. And that is a very hard thing to do. We need to change completely how organizations are structured. I believe that we need to remove the whole concept of equity, of shares. This is something I'm doing in my own organization, Earthian. We're not going to have, shares and equity in the standard sense of the word. We're going to look for value and see what we're doing with value and how we deliver value to society. And I have a system of that, how that's going to work, but I don't think it's applicable to all organizations. But what I think is applicable is that everybody needs to find a new way of working. And all of this, I think, is going to happen. And unless, of course, we don't fight for it. Unless, of course, we are not going to take action to prevent all of that from happening. Because there is a huge danger right now that we might choose a different path. We might choose not to fight for it. Because slavery didn't end just by somebody going like, well, the change is happening, let's just wait for it. People needed to speak up. People needed to fight their regime. People needed to fight both in political terms, but also in just workforce. And with slavery, they actually really needed to fight. I hope this is not going to be the case in this revolution, but I think we need to fight. Because if we don't, then what will prevail is exploitation, where we'll exploit people to the max and go even further. We'll try to see what the limits are and how to burn people out at the edge to maximize how much value they can deliver to the company, because we're going to be looking for profits instead of value. We will have rigid control systems in place to trick people into working as much as possible. We'll value power, and we'll basically be encouraging more slavery. And I don't want to live in that world. I want to live in a world that's very different from that. So I want to ask you the question again. But before I do that, I also want to mention that this is important for Belarus, because I believe that Belarus is in perfect position to start from a blank slate and to create a digital, brand new country that has these types of thinking backboned into how they build the society. If you look at the world, constitutions, parliaments, and all these things, they're outdated by like 1,000 years, right? Everything is static, everything is old. The legal system globally is a complete collapse because it doesn't work with the time. But if a country is able to restart and to create everything more or less from scratch using the best technology, the modern mindset, we can do something really amazing in that country. So let me ask you again, as I asked you in the beginning, do you want to go left or do you want to go right? Because this time you picked left, but if you did go right, we would be talking more about another opportunity, which is the exploitation path. And I really hope that we're not going to go that way. And with that, I invite you to start figuring out what you can do, because you can't blame the governments, you can't blame companies or CEOs. You can only change yourself and what you do with your life. Are you going to demand this type of mindset in your organizations or from your bosses? Are you going to talk about it to everybody you know? What are you going to do to try to help us to move there faster? And I hope that Belarus is going to be the leading country in the world to show that this is possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, but we can't switch on the next speaker without any question to you.
Sure.
Well, what is behind the silent walk? Is it about the style of walking or some emotional part or other perspectives?
Sorry, can you repeat that? There was a bit of a microphone.
Silent walk.
Silent work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, what about it?
That what does it mean? I mean, what is behind this aspect? Whether it's big, like a style of work, or silent, you mean without any emotions, without any, you know.
You mean seamless, right?
Probably, yeah. Yes.
So the word I used was seamless.
I didn't get it right. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. But silent is also okay in some sense. But I think seamless. What I mean is that, you know, when I work right now, most of the time I don't consider it as work, right, at all, right? Sometimes I do and I don't like it, right? So it's kind of, you know, I am at home right now, my kid is behind the door, my wife is here, you know, I'm going to finish this presentation, I'm going to go for a walk, I might meditate somewhere in between, but then I'm going to take a call. It's all seamless, right? It all flows together. There's no difference between, you know, my personal life, my sports, my work. It all happens simultaneously. Right. And for some people, they, you know, it also gives people the power to choose how they want to work. Right. The problem, like I see in a lot of organizations, you come and they go, well, we work 9 to 5 and you have a break at 1. Right. What I try to do in my organizations and in ArcticStartup when I was a CEO there as well, and definitely in Earthian, is like, you know, I want to figure out how does each person work. You know, if you, Nastya, like to wake up at 7 a.m., right, then you will wake up at 7 a.m. and you'll work for like 2 hours and then go to family. But if I like to wake up at 10, then my company's purpose is to adjust how I organize my work to make sure that Dmitry, who likes to wake up at 10, can work efficiently, right? I also need to care about you as a family, right? So I need to know who your husband is, how can I help them, or what is currently happening in the country. That affects everything, right? So it needs to be so seamless that you don't think about it as work at all. It's just part of your life. Right, so you are, you're trying to do your best in your life, and you're not really working. You're just trying to deliver value, and that's all.
Okay, got it. Well, do you see any problems in the situation like we all probably read some months ago when one man, he worked at one time simultaneously at 2 corporations, like at Facebook and Google. That was possible only because of the remote work. And frankly saying, he was okay with working 16 or 12, 16 hours a day, and he was successful in completing his tasks both in Google and Facebook. What do you see? Whether there is any problem in such situation, whether it's okay or not for corporations, for people, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, from a corporation's point, if he was able to exploit them, awesome, good on him. And I don't see that as a problem from a point of view that people working in several places at once, right? I think it's going to happen. I think it's inevitable. I don't want to work for like one organization, right? Like within Earthians, we're going to have like unlimited amount of projects and startups. So I want to have a lot of choice and availability, right? And so I can explore myself. But when it comes to the hours spent, if he spent 16 hours a day and he was okay about it, I think there might be a problem there, because I don't think anybody can be okay working 16 hours a day, right? They can be lying to themselves and saying that I am okay. But if you do it for a long enough time, I think he'll burn out because, a human being is like a heart, right? You have to have a beat and then you have to have an off beat. Your heart does not beat the whole time, right? So if that's what you do with your work life, at some point you're going to have a heart attack, right? So if you work the whole time, 16 hours a day, every day, you will break. So that is a problem. And I really think that it's important to understand that taking breaks is also delivering value to society. It's also work in a bad sense, because if you take a break, you can work much more efficiently. You can deliver things or deliver value much more efficiently. Let's ban the word work. So I think in that sense, it's a problem, and people need to be much more honest with themselves. How do they feel? Are they working for someone else because society said that they should? Or are they actually trying to deliver value to the world?